Hello and welcome to another podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. By the way, this is not a podcast, this is a video where I talk about podcasting. Topic of conversation today is, how should you actually make your show? Should you pitch it or should you launch it? That's what that says right there. Let me explain what I mean by that for those that don't quite get the concept. Typically in the podcasting space, and the way that it's been most of the time, like 99 point infinity, okay, it's a stretch, has been that a podcast producer with an idea just produces and just launches the show. Got an idea? Doesn't matter. Audio drama, interview talk show, investigative reporting. They just go launch a program. They just say, I want to do this, and they do it. And I hope that never changes. I hope there is always an opportunity where someone with an idea and a microphone and a little bit of research online just goes and launches their own show. But that's not the only way that a show can be made live. There's also the pitch. A lot of shows that you see out there were actually pitches before they were podcast. And that means someone is pitching to someone else, probably to help fund the show, maybe to get actors or other talent resources, maybe to get some sort of services like script writing, who knows what it is. But they need some backing behind them. So instead of just doing it on their own, they are going to typically a platform, sometimes a network. Platform, I mean using technology, or a network, not necessarily, but you want to be a part of that audience. Both are valid ways to get a show out there. But back to the pitch for a moment. So once the show has been pitched, they likely will, if in fact you make it past that round, whoever is the gatekeeper of that particular platform or network or whatever, if they like your idea, they will say, great, go produce a pilot. Maybe that's a single episode. Maybe that's a series of 3 episodes. Maybe it's even more than that, but maybe it's a trial program they put you on. But if you are selected, then you typically get some resources. Now, those resources, as I mentioned a moment ago, can span a wide variety of options. Money is always good, but what is the money being used for? I guess it could be so you could, and I'll say the evil words, quit your day job. Or it could be money in the form of promotion, so that you have a chance of breaking into a top spot somewhere. It could be, again, the services that are needed that are required. It could be editing services. It could be production services. It could be a lot of services that you can get once your show has been picked and pitched up. Pitched and then picked up. I think I got that backwards. So which one is right for you? Well, I will tell you this. If you want to make a blockbuster hit, chances are a pitch will get you there faster. It's just the way that it works. That's how television shows become hits. They're pitched first. Movies become hits. They're pitched first. Books become hits. They are pitched first. They are pitched to an organization that has the resources that you don't. And that with the resources of that behind you, then the creator is able to do something larger. Not necessarily better, but larger, more professional than they were able to before. Okay? But every independent producer out there, most independent producers out there, aren't going to get selected, because when you pitch, you're applying for scarce resources, whatever those resources are. You are applying for those resources. If you're pitching, somebody else is pitching. Several somebodies else's are pitching. So you're all in competition. It's a zero-sum game for those resources. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. A lot of people are going to lose, and a handful are going to win. So for most indie producers today, pitching isn't really an option because their chances of success is pretty low. I guess it's an option, but it's not the greatest chance of success. You would be better served today if you have an idea, just to do it, just to start, just to launch, just to do it on your own. That's the way it goes for indie booksellers. For the longest time, up until around the middle aughts, late aughts, publishers of books or writers, authors, had an option to either get an agent or hope somebody would, at a book publishing company, would take pity on them by putting in the slush pile, or then faded into obscurity. A handful of small places might actually publish it. But there was no independent publishing to speak of, an extremely small scale. Podcasting's different. The model is flipped on its head. And there are many more independently produced podcasts than there are pitched podcasts. Podcasts with some sort of backing behind them. Now, of course, the book industry has also flipped recently. Started out the other way, where it was all pitched products and a handful of indies. And then I think it was last year, the year before last, actually more indie books now are being sold. Not just published, because it happened pretty quickly. Indie books were published all the time, but they weren't actually making that great of sales. And I believe that switched. I think it finally reverted to the indie market. I could be wrong on that stat. I could be conflating it with something else. But it's weird in the podcasting world. If you look at the charts, there's a lot of independently produced shows. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of those independently produced shows have some backing behind them. Now, that's today. Let's go to the future. Let's go to the future, 5, 10 years, whatever the number is out. I think there's definitely a case to be made for someone who has if you are an independent producer and you have a really compelling idea for a show, I think that in the future, and that future may be now, it might be a good idea for you to pitch your idea to a place with financial backing. Now, you need to know about the trade-offs of that. Once you get that financial backing from someone, you are going to give up a modicum of control, whether little or a lot. Same thing for the startup world. As soon as you take investor money, you give up something, usually a piece of your company, and quite often some control of your company. Are you willing to do that as an independent producer? To get additional resources, are you willing to give up a certain amount of content, a certain amount of control, not content, make different content? Maybe you could be. We're starting to see a lot of shows that get pitched and then picked up in odd places. Something just fell. A lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but Stitcher, company that made a big splash about 4 or 5 years ago in the market, and they are what they are today, is now picking up and windowing content. With windowing, we should talk about that more in a future episode when I can go directly into that one. They basically limit the availability of the content just to that network for a certain amount of time before it goes live. Different than exclusive. Exclusive means only get it here, right? So Orange is the New Black, only on Netflix. Right. That'll happen too, by the way. And when those sorts of things happen, and when there is more of that those exclusive content distribution deals that are made, when there are more windowing deals that are made, that's when it might be more interesting to have your idea for a show be a part of that. Because you're not going to get a windowing deal or an exclusive deal on a podcast you're already creating. It can happen, but it probably won't happen. That's likely for brand new content, something new you're bringing to the table. And in order to make the new thing happen, you need the backing and the support. I think backing and support is fine. In fact, I think in many cases it's a necessity, because some of this stuff is really hard work, and it might eventually lead to higher quality content. So what should you do? Pitch it or launch it? Think about it when you're creating your content. See which option may sound right to you. If you need help making these sorts of decisions, I launch podcasts. I make shows for firms that lead to business objectives. That's what I do. Podcastlaunch.pro for more information. Email me, evo@podcastlaunch.pro. I'll be back tomorrow with another podcast pontification. Cheers.